and welcome once again to the Brett Chat Sports or BCS podcast. This episode is a 2025 NFL Draft Reaction Special. As part of that, we'll be hearing from a number of fans on how they think their teams did in the draft. Unsurprisingly, 7 of the first 45 selections in this year's draft came from the national champions, Ohio State. Perhaps surprisingly though, Ohio State's championship-winning quarterback Will Howard fell to the 6th round, where he was eventually selected with the 185th pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers. More on that later. As expected, with the first pick in this year's draft, the Tennessee Titans selected quarterback Cam Ward from the University of Miami. Titans fan and friend of the show Shane Jones is currently at a conference in Las Vegas, so let's head over to the Strip to hear from Shane on what he thinks about Cam Ward and the Titans' other selections.
But man, I can't be any more excited for Titans and Cam Ward. I think we got a real winner for a long time. I think he's going to be wearing number 1 at this franchise. A previously retired number in this franchise, Warren Moon ended up giving him the rights to wear the number. I think it's a good move, and I like it. I know we filled some other needs. We got an edge rusher, we got a tight end, we got a couple receivers. One guy I'm really excited about is Shedeur out of Florida, who ran he's only 6 foot, but he ran a 4.3 40 at the combine. So yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential, and I'm excited to see what happens out of this draft class, man.
While the Titans have made some additions in free agency, given how bad Shane thought the Titans O-line was when we spoke back in February, it will be interesting to see how things go for both Cam Ward and the Titans next season, given that they've only selected 1 guard during the draft. In the number 2 spot, the Jags traded up from number 5, giving the Cleveland Browns a bunch of picks both this year and next, so that they could select Travis Hunter from the University of Colorado. Travis Hunter had a lot of success playing at both cornerback and wide receiver at both Jackson State and the University of Colorado, and he has said that he wants to play both positions in the NFL too. This may be my inner cynic, but I'm not entirely sure that is realistic, and part of me thinks that a lot of the reason why he had such success at both positions when he was in college is because his coach at both Jackson State and Colorado was probably the highest profile previous example of a player to have played both cornerback and wide receiver in the NFL, Coach Prime himself, Deion Sanders. You know, Deion Sanders has been very vocal in the past that he feels that he should have had more reps for the Dallas Cowboys in the NFL at wide receiver, and so I can't help thinking that part of Hunter's success may have been that Sanders was so invested in proving himself right by doing everything he could to accommodate Hunter playing at both positions. The NFL is an entirely different beast though, and it's going to be very interesting to see if the Jaguars are going to be willing to accommodate Hunter's wish, or if they are going to put what they think Hunter's best position is before anything that Hunter may want to achieve himself. In the number 3 spot, the New York Giants then selected defensive end Abdul Carter. Later in the first round, they then traded for the Houston Texans number 25 pick so that they could also select the quarterback Jackson Dart. It has to be said that the Giants have done a very good job both this year and last of selecting some good players in the draft, but it will be very much on Joe Shane, the general manager, and the head coach Brian Daboll to make sure that this season's draft selections, as well as the Giants as a whole, perform very well in the 2025 season, as team president and co-owner John Mara has made it very clear that both of their jobs are on the line if they do not perform better this season. With the 4th pick in this year's draft, my team, the New England Patriots, selected offensive tackle Will Campbell from LSU. In the later round, we then went on to add depth to both defensive lines, as well as adding some extra options to the skill positions. Kickers can win games though, and I have to say that I think that the kicker that we selected from the University of Miami, Andres Borregales, could be a hidden gem. Overall, I am very happy with what the Patriots have done in this draft. We saw last season that Drake May is capable of doing some wonderful things behind what was a terrible offensive line. Now that he has that added protection and has got some extra options in the skill positions, who knows what he may be able to achieve. I'm definitely biased, but for me, things are looking very promising for Mike Babel ahead of his first season as the Patriots' new head coach. With more on what another team in the AFC East did with their draft selections, let's hear from Ben Carter on the New York Jets.
Ben here, New York Jets fan with the hoodie to prove it, reflecting on their 2025 NFL draft, which started with the selection of Armand Membou, offensive tackle from Missouri in the first round, 7th overall. A pick probably more on the boring side, especially given they went out and took an offensive tackle with their first round pick last year in Oli Fashanu. But it addressed a clear need. The Jets had a gaping hole at right tackle. They now have bookend tackles, first round picks back-to-back years. I like this. It sets the foundation for them going forward. They're going to focus on building in the trenches, which is the kind of thing that Detroit did. Obviously, their new head coach, Aaron Glenn, came from that successful program in Detroit. I think he wants to try and copy that mold, that blueprint for a team that's been very lost for a long time now. So they then went out and addressed their other glaring need in the second round, which was a pass catcher. They took Mason Taylor, the tight end from LSU. Again, I like that pick. I think they needed a wide receiver or a tight end, someone who can offer Fields an extra option down the field beyond Garrett Wilson, who was kind of the only serviceable receiver on this roster going into the weekend. In the rounds that followed, they then took some impact players at a few other spots. They did get a speedster at wide receiver. They did get some linebacker depth. They got some D-line depth. They didn't address quarterback, which is interesting. I thought they might take a flyer on a guy in a later round, and as Shedeur fell, there was maybe a temptation to go and take him, but the Jets decided not to go in that direction. I like the picks. Again, I think they're clearly a team that are in a rebuilding mode. They have a lot of gaps to fill.
Elsewhere in the first round, the first rushing back off the board was Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who went to the Las Vegas Raiders with the number 6 pick. The Raiders had the worst rushing offense last season, and so the addition of someone like Jeanty, who was the only player in college football last season to rush for more than 1,000 yards, including plays that had broken tackles, is much needed. Michigan's Colston Loveland was then the first tight end off the board when he was selected by the Chicago Bears with the 10th pick. Loveland set a school record last season, getting 56 receptions for 582 yards and 5 touchdowns. Given the Bears' new head coach Ben Johnson liked to line up with 2 tight ends when he was the Detroit Lions offensive coordinator, the addition of Loveland now potentially gives the Bears a fantastic tight end tandem with Cole Kmet next season and beyond. I suppose the biggest headline from this year's draft was that the University of Colorado's Shedeur Sanders was not selected in the first round. Instead, he fell to the 5th round, where he was eventually picked up by the Cleveland Browns. It was perhaps a very curious decision by the Browns though, given that they'd already selected Dylan Gabriel from the University of Oregon in the 3rd round, and had also signed both Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett in the off-season. This is the same Browns franchise though that gave away a bunch of first round draft picks as well as a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun Watson when he was facing very serious allegations from multiple women, so it should perhaps come as no surprise that the Browns made this decision. It will be very interesting then to see what now happens in Cleveland. Joe Flacco is a very good quarterback for either Gabriel and or Sanders to be learning from before one of them presumably becomes the Browns' new starting quarterback. It does have to be said but it's going to be very interesting to see how the failed Deshaun Watson experiment ends then, given that if the Browns were to waive him, they would take a very big salary cap hit. All the other teams were also drafting this year, so let's hear from some other fans on what their teams did in this year's draft.
Hi, I'm Amy Thibault. I'm a Chiefs fan. I think the Chiefs did really well in the draft. I'm particularly pleased with the first pick, the offensive tackle, Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons was just a steal because if his knee had completely recovered, he would have gone much earlier and we wouldn't have been able to touch him. I have every faith that this man is going to be absolutely fantastic for us guarding Mahomes' blind side.
Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. I think it was a good draft for the Eagles. It's incredible, really, that they focused so much on adding to a defense that was already the best defense in the NFL, certainly one of, and many would say the best defense in the NFL. We know Nakobe Dean had a bad injury, so they're looking for some cover to go alongside the re-signed Zach Bourne, and I think they've looked for, yet again, fantastic GM Howie Roseman has looked for versatility and character, and to get Jihad Campbell at pick 31, they made sure they did it with a quick trade. It's fantastic. And then behind that, they added Andrew McCarby, and Ty Robinson. And I think all three will play some part. We know how injuries go in the NFL. Injuries occur. I don't think it's going to take long for all three of those top draft picks to be involved with the Eagles. The defense looks absolutely secure and elite. But listen, the Eagles want to win another Super Bowl, and they want to win it right now. They probably have a chance.
Hi, I'm Brett, and I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and here are my thoughts on the Buffalo Bills 2025 draft. For their first round selection, the Bills took a cornerback, Maxwell Hairston, out of the University of Kentucky, and overall, I think it was a solid pick. I tend to, when I look at the draft, focus less on the individual players, just because there's so many things that can go right or wrong with an individual prospect, so I tend to focus more on tiers and positions, and from that perspective, I think the Bills absolutely nailed it. Cornerback is a huge position of need for the Bills. That was very clear in the AFC Championship game, where Kansas City really picked on the secondary. Looking at the rest of the Bills picks beyond the first round, it was very clear they came into this draft wanting to focus on the defensive side of the ball, and I think that was absolutely the right thing. Most of the games that they lost last year, really they lost on the defense. And looking at just the way the Bills play defense, they don't blitz a lot. They really rely on their front four to generate pressure on the quarterback, and they just weren't able to do that last year. So the Bills absolutely tried to address that. 2 cornerbacks, 3 defensive linemen. Those were the first 5 picks for the Bills. They came back and took another cornerback later on. So 3 cornerbacks is perhaps a little high, but if I go back to when the Bills chose Elam a few years ago in the first round, and that one didn't work out, the Bills went back in for a cornerback later on and chose Christian Benford, and they just signed him to an extension in the offseason. He's been the best cornerback, and so I think it shows that sometimes even if the guys don't work out early on, there can be some advantages just in terms of having quantity in terms of the number of players to work with.
Hey guys, I'm Charlie. I am, for my sins, an Atlanta Falcons fan. First of all, Jalen Walker, 15th overall, brilliant pick. Hugely happy about this. Really surprising among the fan base that this has happened. If nothing because we thought he'd be taken far earlier, but mostly because he's a University of Georgia player. The University of Georgia has not been represented well in Atlanta's drafts, which is a surprise considering how much overlap there is between the fan bases. But Jalen Walker was an absolute wrecker at Georgia. He played off the ball, played on the line. It was a force to be reckoned with in both spots. So it's going to be a hugely important piece in a defense lacking any sort of character, impressiveness, sacks, anything really. It's no surprise that this draft is almost entirely defensive. So Jalen Walker, hugely happy with that first round pick. Second round, or well, what should have been our second pick was James Pierce Jr. So we traded back up into the first. I think this makes sense for a number of reasons. So we basically gave up a second rounder and a first rounder to move back up into the first. So we essentially swapped 2026 first for a 2025 first by giving up a second, and that's not too bad. I mean, if you think about it, we took Michael Penix last year. Michael Penix has now got a year less on a contract. We sort of lost a year. So by trying to sort of front load our picks a little bit, we're giving Penix basically more time on a rookie contract to try and get to the point where we're winning. So we didn't take a second rounder, but we had a third rounder in Xavier Watts, who was projected to sort of go in the sort of mid-second. So really happy that he fell to us. He was one of those players where you see him falling in the draft and you're like, let's just take this guy, let's take this guy, let's take this guy. And it never happens. You always take some weird guy, but it actually happened this time. So Xavier Watts, great player out of Notre Dame. Really happy. He's not. Same with Billy Bowman, we'll get to in a second, where they're sort of like not athletic specimens, but are really clever football players. We'll get to the ball really quickly. He's going to be our safety, starting alongside Jesse Bates. And then we've got Billy Bowman Jr. He's listed as a safety on most websites and big boards, but it seems more like he's going to play nickel or something outside, certainly as a corner. That's what Jeff Ulbrich has said, the defensive coordinator. Final pick, bit of a dart throw, but we've got Jack Nelson out of Wisconsin. He is a prototypical big boy out of the Big Ten. Could be good, could be rubbish. Can always be useful on the offensive line. So nice pick to have. Good draft for the Falcons. Happy with what we've done.
I would also like to say a quick word about defensive tackle Derek Harmon, who was selected from the University of Oregon by the Pittsburgh Steelers with the 21st pick. Derek's mother, Tiffany Zane, who was on life support following a stroke in 2022, sadly died shortly after she learned her son had been selected. As someone whose mother also died following a stroke when I was a similar age to Derek, my heart goes out to both him and his family. It will speak volumes about both the NFL and those at the heart of the Steelers organisation, how much support they now give to Derek following this genuinely tragic loss. With his thoughts on the Steelers draft selections, here is friend of the show and Steelers fan, Jason Toms.
Our top pick of the draft was Derek Harmon from Oregon. Love this pick. He's one of those guys he was born to be a Steeler, really. Just look at him. He's great. I love him. It's going to be a very rough to run against the Harmon-Hayward tandem next year. I'm looking forward to the complete lack of rushing yards that anyone manages to get against us. Obviously, have to send condolences to Derek's family and obviously Derek himself, for whatever that's worth, for his mother's passing at a time that should have been one of the highlights of his life. It's a horrible thing to have happen. In round 6, the Steelers took Will Howard, quarterback from Ohio State, which makes me incredibly excited, but also a little bit anxious because, well, for those who don't know him, Howard's built like Big Ben Roethlisberger. He's 6'4", 240 pounds. He's shown flashes of Big Ben in other ways too. He's got great throwing mechanics. He can throw on the run with ease. He does that sort of get off me bro thing when people try and tackle him and they don't have perfect technique. He will have no qualms putting them on the floor and making them look silly. He can run a bit, but again in a sort of Big Ben style. He's more of a sort of lumbering short yard, smashing through would-be tacklers kind of guy, diving for the line, that sort of thing. But yeah, he needs the time to sort of get into it and develop his weaknesses, because as good as the physical side of his game is, the mental side of his game, the using his eyes to move cornerbacks and move defenders, the going through his reads and his progressions and looking at what's going on, that stuff obviously takes time in the NFL, and he isn't quite there yet with that. So yeah, hopefully we'll give him time to sit on the bench and develop before it becomes his team, because I think that's where a lot of modern NFL teams go wrong, is that, we've got this shiny new quarterback, let's put him in day one, and I don't think Will's going to benefit much from that.
Thank you to all of the fans who contributed to this episode. Let's end by going back to some of our contributors with their thoughts on who they think won the draft.
I mean, on paper, it looks like the Patriots and the Panthers did really, really well. But it's not really about how you did during draft week. It's about how well you can develop those players and help them reach their potential.
I suppose two teams that jumped out that I thought had really good drafts were the Ravens and the Eagles, but those are teams that were Super Bowl contenders already, and I think they just added a few guys that are going to maybe help them push even better for the Super Bowl, which as a Bills fan is a little scary because I'd rather see the Bills more in that position and less them.
It's probably the bloody Ravens again, isn't it? They do it every year. There's just like sensible, solid, can't argue with them picks that address needs the team had. So annoying.
Thank you once again to everyone who contributed to this episode. I am now going to take a little bit of a break before I come back in June with the final 2 episodes of Series 3 of the BCS podcast. But for now though, this brings an end to this episode of the BCS podcast. As always, thank you so much for joining me, and I certainly do hope to see you again in June. Bye bye now! The BCS podcast is written, produced, edited and hosted by me, Brett Walker. Thank you to Boris Anderoff and Pixabay for the use of the music and sound effects in this podcast. This episode features contributions from Ben Carter, Charlie Deeks, Brett Griffin, Shane Jones, Ryan Owen, Dr. Mimi Thebo and Jason Toms.